A month later. New York. Westchester County. Xavier Academy for Gifted Youth. Several mutants are on vigil, leaning against the doorframe. Charles is such a fuss. We've been at war for a month now and we haven't seen anything. Yeah, it's been said that Joker might come to attack here. But a month has passed, and we haven't even seen Joker's face. The other mutant picked his finger in boredom, and then replied. Both of them are newly enrolled mutants. I have been hiding in Brazil before, so naturally it is impossible to get in touch with Joker. Yeah, I feel like Charles is exaggerating the facts, that Joker is obviously just a common man. Another mutant said disdainfully. In the Mutant Academy, some mutants are full of hostility to common people. After all, quite a few of them were forced to live in dark corners with anonymity because they were forced by these so-called common people. If Joker dares to come, then we will kill him directly. Isn't this preventing a war? Ha 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 ha. Mutant laughed wildly. Oh, is it so? Sabretooth suddenly rushed up at an extremely fast speed, and then appeared in front of Mutant. The sharp nails scratched the mutant's neck, and the heads of the two mutants rolled to the ground. They didn't even see what their assailant looked like. The vigilance of this group of people is really bad enough. Brother, are you ready for my arrival? There was a sneer at the corner of Sabretooth's mouth, and he muttered to himself. Immediately afterwards, Sabretooth jumped onto the gate and sneaked directly into the academy. Not far away, Abomination and Electron are leading a SHIELD agent team towards Mutant Academy. This is the one who abandoned you here, but you must change it and make a big fuss. Don't worry, I will definitely make a fuss. The electro-optic man didn't say much, but just spoke lightly. He felt the electric arc overflowing from his body because of the violent energy. There was a sneer at the corner of his mouth. He used to be timid and timid. Now I have been staying with Joker and others in the Hydra base for 3 months. Darren has had a complete makeover. He is no longer the Darren who is often abandoned, he is now the 4th general under the little hand, Light. Boom. A Hydra special soldier behind took an RPG missile and blasted directly at the teaching building. The huge amounts of explosion woke up almost all mutants from their sleep. What's wrong? Chin was just woken up, and asked with a confused face. Shaking her head vigorously, she immediately woke up. It's not good, it's an enemy attack, Joker is here. Chin's face changed drastically, and then quickly woke up the people next to her. Hurry up and call other people. Damn, who is on duty today and didn't find out. When Chin got below, more than half of the mutants had already appeared here. Charles was in the middle, and said solemnly, the war between us and the Joker has begun, don't hold back. Yes, Charles changed. Most of the mutants are eyes full of excitement. Then they rushed out one by one. Jane, Logan, you two don't go out. Just as Jean and Logan were about to leave, Charles suddenly spoke. Chin turned her head with some doubts. Why? Charles shook his head, but said nothing. It's just that his eyes suddenly became very deep. Just when the two were wondering, Sabretooth suddenly broke in from the outside. For the first time, he didn't look at Charles who was sitting in the wheelchair, but at Logan who was standing aside. Brother, long time no see. Sabretooth spoke in a tone he hadn't seen for a long time. Brother? I'm not your brother. Logan shook his head. While speaking, the 3 wolf claws on Logan's hand flashed out, and then stared at Sabretooth coldly. Jean, take care of Charles. After saying that, Logan rushed toward Sabretooth. Tear. Logan plunged his 3 wolf claws into Sabretooth's heart without any hesitation. Sabretooth sneered. He went right up to it, and grabbed Logan by the throat. Both of them use life for lifestyle of play. But both of them have the super ability to heal, so no one can do anything to the other for a while. Looking at Sabretooth's appearance, Logan couldn't help but widen his eyes. Why are you like me? Haven't I already said it? You are my dear brother. I took you away from your parents' prison more than 200 years ago, and you even killed your father yourself. Don't you forget yet? Sabretooth kept prodding Logan with words. I haven't heard anything you said. Logan snorted, and distanced himself from Sabretooth. The two of them fought in vain. The wound on Logan's neck where Sabretooth had just grabbed him was starting to heal. Seeing Logan step back, Jean strode forward. Opening the finger slightly, a hot phoenix force gushes out from Chin's body. The ability of the piano is well controlled, and almost all the temperature is applied to Sabretooth's body. I saw Sabretooth's body constantly melting, scabbing, and healing. This process has been repeated. Sabretooth endured the severe pain and Zhang taunted, is that all you have? Hearing this, the angry Chin increased the horsepower output. And now? Chin sneered, looked at Sabretooth in pain and said. Sabretooth struggled to his feet, then took a slow step forward. Now? It doesn't seem to be doing well now, Sabretooth endured the process of the skin being constantly cooked and came to Jin's side, and then wanted to ruthlessly pierce her claws into Jin's head. On the nick of time, Sabretooth suddenly felt a tingle in the head. Charles made a move. Chin, come back. Chin quickly restrained the Phoenix Force on her body and retreated. Sabretooth stood up and wanted to rush over, but Logan stood in front of the two of them. What exactly does Joker want? Charles sighed, and then asked helplessly. You should talk to him about this. I don't know anything. While talking, Logan's phone rang suddenly. Logan looked at Charles, and the professor nodded imperceptibly. After picking up the phone, Logan's pupils constricted when he heard the voice in the microphone. Then Logan handed the phone to Charles. He took a deep look at Sabretooth not far away and said to Charles, "It's Oda's call. The Mutant Academy is under fire. The Hydra agents and mutants led by Abomination and Electro fought together, and the courtyard was filled with explosions almost every moment. In contrast, the dormitory where Charles and the others lived was unusually quiet." Charles slowly took the phone from Logan's hand and put it to his ear. "Hello?" Joker's voice came. "Charles, this should be the first time." "No, it's the second time we met." Charles didn't speak. Only slightly trembling hands exposed his fearful heart. "Honestly, I'm really curious. What do you think about the Good Mutant Academy going out of business and being the lackey of that BL*CKM*N Nick Fury? Or is it that you mutants are humble in your bones?" Joker asked in a cold voice. "What do you know?" Charles couldn't help but said to the Joker in the microphone. "Mutant is inherently an unstable factor. I just want to give Mutant a home." "That's why you traveled all the way from Nepal to New York for Mutant Academy?" Joker's mocking laughter rang through the microphone. Charles didn't want to continue talking about this topic with Joker, so he asked bluntly, "What do you want to do with so much effort and send so many people to attack Mutant Academy?" As expected of a professor, he understood my intention so quickly. The Joker on the opposite side laughed. "Since you guys like being dogs so much, why don't you do it for me? You must know that Nick Fury has never given you any good looks. If we are combined, then we will be an extremely powerful force in the world. What do you think? How about it, Charles?" "It's absolutely impossible," Charles said in a cold tone. "If I really take the Mutant Academy to join you today, then in the entire United States. No, there will be no place for mutant in the whole world. There is absolutely no way I would let this happen." Joker sneered. "It's as if you have such a big shelter now. I know the history of mutants. Since mutants were discovered, they have been living in hiding for hundreds of years. If this is the case, why don't you try to change? Maybe we can work together to create a country suitable for mutants' life. You are old, you should let go of the banner in your hands. Wouldn't it be better to hand over the Mutant Academy to the Electric Man I trained?" "HMPH. Electro. Is that what you called Darren? I thought you'd call him a Magneto." Charles sneered. "Magneto is in a prison in Washington State right now. When you mention Magneto, your tone is so excited. Are you thinking about him?" Joker sat on a couch in the Hydra base, grinning with his lips parted. The voice was so piercing that Charles couldn't help covering his head. "It seems that you are afraid of my laughter," Joker said to Charles. "But that's right. After all, you feel abilities' emotions, but those common people's emotions are dozens of times. Would you like to try to invade my mind again? I can remember the last time feeling it still fresh." Charles gripped the phone tightly in his hand. With Joker, it was the first time that he made his proud super ability invalid. "How on earth did you do it?" Charles gritted his teeth and asked. "Hee, it's very simple, but I won't tell you, unless your Mutant Academy joins me." After speaking, Joker hung up the phone. Sabretooth gave Charles a cold look, and then asked, "Charles, are you really not going to join us? We are much better than Nick Fury. In my day, they were just a bunch of slaves." No talking. Sabretooth didn't say much, just nodded and said, "I hope you won't regret it in the future." After speaking, Sabretooth turned around and left. Just after Sabretooth left, the sound of fighting outside gradually died down. "Why are they all gone all of a sudden?" Jean looked at Sabretooth's leaving back with doubts on her face. Logan was also full of question marks. Charles smiled bitterly, and then explained to the two of them. "Joker, he knows we won't rely on him. He just wanted to teach me 10 lessons in the future. After all, I tried to hack Joker's mind a month ago. But it's also a warning to me from Joker. Charles is worthy of being a person who has lived for decades. It is said that people are 70 years old." He figured out Joker's intentions almost quickly. "Because Nick Fury came here to find me before, he sent these guys here today to make trouble." Charles shook his head, then leaned back on the wheelchair and said to the two, "Fortunately, I saw through Joker's intentions and didn't use brainwaves to check their memories on those of his people, otherwise, next time Joker will come for real. It's gone. Even if it's true, we're not afraid of him. I'm just afraid of ruining the dormitory today, so I didn't use all my strength. Chin snorted coldly, and then said with a look of disdain. The facts are indeed true. Chin's superpower is Phoenix Force, and the rating of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the highest level of Omega-level mutant. Once Chin lost control once. At that time, except for Logan who could barely get close to Chin with his super self-healing ability, all the other mutants were excluded from within 30 meters. Charles's face suddenly became serious when he heard Jean say this. He looked at Jean and Logan seriously. Chin, I know that your ability is very powerful, even among all Omega-level mutants, it is the strongest one, but you must not go to trouble with Joker just because of what happened today. Have you discovered the agents under Joker today? Those agents are all S.H.I.E.L.D. people. Until now, Nick Fury himself didn't know that their S.H.I.E.L.D. had been infiltrated into plugs by Joker. What Charles said made Chin feel a little annoyed, and she was still very confident about her super ability. So Chin curled her lips, and then said with an unconvinced face, whether I am afraid of Joker or not, I will only know who is stronger between me and Joker's subordinates. And you are not saying that Nick Fury does not know that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been killed by Joker? Has it infiltrated? How about we tell Nick Fury directly, and then sell him a face? Maybe our living environment on Earth will be better in the future? Charles smiled wryly. Chin, your thinking is too simple. Humans' attitude towards us mutant is not determined by a few people above, but because we have the same genes as humans, but have the ability that they can't get in 10 lifetimes. Since the appearance of the first mutant, we have been discriminated against and attacked by humans. Some crazy people even want to use us as his weapons. Speaking of this, Charles looked at Chin, and then said earnestly, Chin, listen to me. What happened today? Just pretend nothing happened. Anyway, the 2 mutants on duty at the gate today are from South Africa. The ruthless mutant recruited here will die when he dies. As for Joker and Nick Fury, we don't need to bother. Even if we tell Nick Fury, he will definitely not accept our favor, and we may end up with Joker's destructive revenge. The power of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't need to say how big it is. After all, it is a global violent law enforcement agency recognized by the Council. After speaking, Charles looked at Logan again. In fact, the person who worries him the most is not Phoenix, Jean Grey, but Wolverine Logan. After all, Logan has the ability that everyone in this world dreams of, immortality. Even nuclear bombs can resist with physical strength. With this kind of ability, Logan might suddenly run to Joker for revenge at any time. Finally, Charles' teacher answered with a sigh. He knows Logan's character, and if he doesn't keep an eye on him, he will definitely go to New York to find Joker. Logan, you will be responsible for my safety during this period. As for your lessons, let Chin teach them now. Logan's face was very ugly, but in the end he only nodded. Oh well. I have to say that perhaps it is not Logan who knows Logan best, but Charles. Logan originally planned to go directly to New York to find Joker for revenge in a few days, but now, with Charles's almost abnormal brainwaves, he should be more peaceful. S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury and Hill were looking at the screen in front of them in the conference room with serious expressions on their faces. On the screen is the thing that Joker sent to Mutant Academy not long ago to make trouble. What's going on here? Why did these teams suddenly go from Queens to Westchester? Nick Fury looked at Hill, and then asked with some doubts, Hill, are you sending these bug teams to Chester for a mission? Hill shook his head. Not me. Then what's going on? Nick Fury rubbed his chin and thought. Soon, Nick Fury thought of someone. This person is also the only one besides him and Hill who can mobilize S.H.I.E.L.D.'s agent without going through him, Pierce. Hill is not an idiot, after all, an idiot cannot sit in their position. Could it be Pierce? Hill said in shock. Nick Fury squinted and shook his head. Don't talk nonsense. We can't be sure that those people must be sent by Pierce. Don't forget. Joker's base is in Queens, but we haven't found it yet. With Joker's strength, he can't seduce several agents. What's the problem? It's just that although Nick Fury said so, a seed of doubt had already been planted in his heart. Beep. The summoning point has reached 100. Do you want to activate the summoning? Huh? You can summon again so soon? Lin asked with some doubts. Beep. Some time ago, Joker sent the Hydra agent in S.H.I.E.L.D. to Mutant Academy to make a big fuss. Now, Nick Fury has begun to suspect some people in S.H.I.E.L.D. and started a secret investigation. Based on this, the summoning point rewards 50 points, plus the original 50 points, the host can now summon. Then summon. Don't give me those common villains. Lin curled her lips. Look at the level of characters on the front side, and then look at the villains. Only a Joker can hold up a row. Wouldn't it be more and more boring if it goes on like this? Beep. The host intention has been detected, the prize pool is being adjusted. Beep. The adjustment is successful. Calling. Marvel Universe. Pegasus Galaxy. On a planet at war. Thanos sits aloft on the throne made of the hardest material in the universe, watching his subordinates slaughter the inhabitants of this planet with cold eyes. There was no emotion at all in his eyes. After all, having lived for such a long time, he has long been used to going south and north. Behind him was a man holding a scepter with a panicked expression. If there were people from Asgard here, they would definitely recognize that the man with a frightened face in front of them was the second prince of Asgard, Loki Odinson. Thanos closed his eyes and moved his fingers casually. With every slight fluctuation, thousands of people on this planet lose their lives. Loki, it's been a while since I rescued you from the universe. Do you know why I leave every time I kill half the population of a planet? Loki stood behind Thanos, shaking his head slightly. It is true that he has only been with Thanos for a short half a month, but in this half month, Thanos has already fought a planet. But Loki couldn't figure it out. Why does Thanos only wipe out half of the life on that planet at a time? If all of them are wiped out, wouldn't it be a better choice to let the army move in? The reason is actually very simple, because I am doing good things, not doing bad things. Speaking of this, a gleam flashed in Thanos' eyes. He has always believed that this matter is the meaning of his coming to this world. Thanos sat on his throne, looking at the dying crowd below, in a good mood. Moreover, Loki comes from Asgard, and is an abandoned child abandoned by Asgard. If he deals with the people of Asgard in the future, it may have a miraculous effect. So Thanos also explained to Loki unabashedly. I have realized since I was born that the resources of the entire universe are limited, and the number of life forms is too much. To achieve balance, the only way to achieve balance is to eliminate half of them. Life. And my goal is to eliminate half of the life in this universe. In order to achieve this goal, I can sacrifice everything, including my life. Are you willing to fight for me? Loki raised his eyes slightly, his eyes full of shock. He was trembling all over, and the hands surrounding the scepter were also trembling non-stop. Destroy the entire universe, half of life? This is totally crazy. At first Loki thought Thanos was just having some special quirk. Loki lowered his head slightly, but he kept calculating in his heart. After a while, Loki said, definitely no problem, it's my honor. But I also have a request, if you can agree, I can fight for you. Loki looked up and looked at Thanos in front of him. What conditions? Thanos was slightly unhappy, but he still asked patiently. After all, Luke deserved his patience. My condition is simple, I want to unify Midgard. Loki's tone was full of madness, and his eyes were full of ambition. Thanos squinted, he also saw the madness in Loki's eyes, and nodded in satisfaction. See that gem on the scepter in your hand? That's the mind gem, one of the 6 infinite gems. I'm lending it to you, and you can rule Midgard with this mind gem. Loki looked at the scepter in front of him with a face full of surprise, and then stared closely at the gem on the scepter. You say this is mind gem? Loki pales in shock. Having grown up in Asgard, Loki definitely knows what a mind gem is. There are 6 infinite gems in the legendary universe. If 6 infinite gems are gathered together, they will be able to fulfill any wish of anyone. Loki never expected that the ordinary scepter that Thanos handed over to him would actually be embedded with a mind gem. Thanos nodded. Remember what you said, I will wait for you to become the king of Midgard. Loki froze for a moment, then thought of something and said hastily, then how should I find Midgard? It's hundreds of thousands of light years away from Earth. Thanos couldn't help laughing at Loki's ignorance. He couldn't imagine that Loki, as the second prince of Asgard, was so ignorant. So Thanos glanced at Wumuhou, who was doing nothing, and said something to Wumuhou. Umuhou, please explain to Loki. Loki, you are also a mage, you don't need to lay a good foundation. Loki patted his head somewhat honestly. Wumuhou gave Loki a cold look. To be honest, as one of the 5 generals under Thanos, he really looked down on Loki as an outsider. But since it was Thanos' order, Ebony Monkey still patiently explained to Loki. Each gemstone has its own characteristics. And the mind gem in your hand can enlarge your perception of magic to the limit. And you also perceive the energy released by other gemstones. One of our troops is near Midgard now, and they discovered that someone on Midgard has started researching the reality gem. As soon as the reality gem releases its energy, you can follow that energy to Midgard. Really? Loki looks at Thanos with feigned excitement. Thanos nodded. What Wumuhou said is right, but you have to pay attention, mind gem is only temporarily lent to you by me. Enough is enough. Loki bowed his head slightly, showing his submission to Thanos. Where Thanos couldn't see, Luigi's eyes were already bloodshot. Very good. I will send an army to help you. Now Midgard doesn't even have the ability to leave the Earth to fight in the universe. I will send you a Kirita fleet directly. I don't think it will be difficult for them to unify Midgard. Thank you for your generosity, ha ha ha. Thanos laughed happily. A Kirita fleet plus a temporarily loaned psychic scepter, exchange for a Loki, this is a surefire business. Just then, a person walked in suddenly. He stepped forward quickly, and whispered something in Thanos' ear. Thanos' face suddenly changed, and he said directly to Loki, Loki, go down. You should get familiar with Mind Gem's ability first. After that, I will send you to meet with the leader of the Kirita fleet remotely. Loki looked at Thanos with some doubts, wondering what could make him, a level godfather, panic. But Loki can't control these now, he has to find a way to save Asgard. He nodded, then walked straight away from Thanos' side and returned to his camp for a long time. What did you say? Thanos looked at the soldier beside him in disbelief. You're saying that Black Dwarf was defeated by a nobody who came out of nowhere. Not only Thanos, but even Wu Muhou behind the funeral had a look of disbelief. Black Dwarf, like Thanos, is one of the 5 Black Yao generals under Thanos. Their strengths are similar, except that Black Dwarf focuses on physics, while Wu Muhou prefers to use magic. It's impossible. This planet is just a barbaric civilization. How could there be someone who can defeat Black Dwarf? Wu Muhou screamed. The gap between Black Dwarf and Wu Muhou is not very big. If Black Dwarf can be defeated, it means that that person can defeat him at once. Wu Muhou absolutely cannot accept the occurrence of such a thing as. After Thanos' initial shock, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but grin. Interesting. How interesting. Thanos put his hand on Umuhu's shoulder lightly, and then comforted. Umuhu, don't worry. The universe is so big, there will always be some characters that we haven't discovered. It's not surprising that we can defeat Black Dwarf. Let's go and see together. I'm also curious, who can defeat Black Dwarf? After speaking, Thanos looked at the soldier. The soldier stood there, somewhat at a loss. Wu Muhou snorted coldly. What are you doing in a daze? Why don't you take us to meet the person who defeated Black Dwarf? The soldier nodded quickly, then stood up with a bowed body. The place where the battle took place just now is 20 kilometers southeast of here. Wu Muhou nodded, looking in that direction. Suddenly, Wu Muhou opened his eyes wide, and then said to Thanos, I saw them. After finishing speaking, Wu Muhou directly and lightly swiped towards the space in front of him. A circular portal instantly appeared in front of Thanos and Wu Muhou. Wu Muhou bowed aside and waited for Thanos to enter. Thanos also walked in unceremoniously, and Wu Muhou followed. At the moment, the guy who defeated Steppenwolf was sitting on Black Dwarf's body without any image, holding a huge amounts of axe in his hand. Who are you? Thanos narrowed his eyes, looked at this race he had never seen before and spoke. This dress, this is absolutely impossible to be a person that can be raised on this barren planet. Are you the man in charge of this army? The man sitting on Black Dwarf slowly put away the spikes on the armor, then erected the axe on the ground and asked Thanos. Thanos nodded. If you can't give me a reason today, then you can stay here forever. But he didn't seem to hear Thanos' words, and stood there stupidly. After a long time, he said helplessly, your subordinates are too weak, and they can't even bring me the joy of fighting. The blue veins on the forehead of the lying Black Dwarf instantly filled his head. Black Dwarf couldn't help shouting, if you didn't talk about martial arts sneak attack, how could I lose so quickly? But he didn't pay attention to Black Dwarf, but looked straight at Thanos. To be honest, I don't know how I appeared in this universe. Let me introduce myself, my name is. Scratching his head, he sighed. Forget it. I have been fighting for countless years. During this process, I have long forgotten my own name. You should still call my codename, Steppenwolf. I'm used to a life of constant battles, but now that I've calmed down suddenly, I'm still not used to it. Steppenwolf couldn't help but smiled wryly. Countless ages? This universe? As a person cursed by knowledge, Thanos immediately grasped the 2 doubts in Steppenwolf's tone. Where are you from? Thanos looked at Steppenwolf cautiously and asked. Steppenwolf thought for a long time before he stuttered and said, I am from the sky. Apocalypse Star. It should be called this name. I am the military commander of Apocalypse Star, and I am Dark Lord Doc, a member of Side's Dark Elite. He has helped Darkseid conquer countless planets for a long time. Steppenwolf's eyes became brighter as he talked, and finally he answered Thanos with his head held high. Apocalypse Star. Thanos murmured in a low voice, and then he turned his head to look at his military advisor Ebony and asked with some doubts. Did you find out where the unrevealed star he said is? Wu Muhou closed his eyes and checked the information in his mind. After a long time, Wu Muhou opened his eyes. There are 69,237 known planets named apocalypse stars in the universe. Among them, excluding the planets without life and the planets that are still in the original form, there are a total of 5 planets with relatively developed civilizations. Among the 5, there is no one named Steppenwolf or Dark-Shinned. Hearing Wu Muhou's words, Steppenwolf was a little unsteady, and the giant axe in his hand fell to the side. His eyes lost their light. How could this be? If the war is lost, what is the meaning of my life? Steppenwolf muttered to himself. Hearing Steppenwolf's words, Thanos' eyes suddenly flashed a bright light. He walked quickly to Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf and Thanos are about the same height, so Thanos looks almost directly at Steppenwolf. Can you let me see your combat power? If your combat power is okay, I can hand over one of my fleets to you. Really? Then can I start a war at will? Steppenwolf immediately spoke excitedly. Thanos nodded. The fleet I gave you, of course it is yours. It's just that the planets you conquered belong to me. Definitely. I just love war. Steppenwolf pointed his axe at Thanos, and said directly, don't go back on your word. Thanos smiled slightly, and immediately put a suit of battle armor on himself, and a huge amounts of double-edged knife appeared in his hand. Steppenwolf got up and went straight up, slashing heavily at Thanos' head with the giant axe. Thanos quickly picked up the weapon in his hand to resist, and the huge amounts of power made Thanos take several steps back at once. Thanos looked at Steppenwolf in horror. This Steppenwolf who appeared out of nowhere already has the strength of a level godfather with just one hit. Thanos shook his numb palm, looking at Steppenwolf in horror. How could a person with the strength of a level godfather be inferior to others? Thanos, as a person with the special strength of the level godfather, naturally knows how terrifying the other strength of the level godfather is. How can this be? But Steppenwolf didn't answer Thanos' question. He saw himself forcing Thanos back with an axe, and directly picked up the giant axe to bully him. Axe after axe struck Thanos' double-edged sword. Thanos finally seized an opportunity, and the regiment finally escaped from Steppenwolf. He gasped heavily. Seeing that the Steppenwolf was about to charge up, he quickly said, okay, I already know your strength. Only then did the Steppenwolf stop. Seeing Steppenwolf stop, Thanos also put down the double-edged knife in his hand, then lowered his head and meditated. As for Wu Muhou, who was not far away, he had been staring blankly for a long time. He had no idea that this man could fight Thanos. Even judging from the performance just now, Steppenwolf even has strength much stronger than Thanos. I give you the Kirita fleet. Now that the Kirita fleet is going to invade a planet in the near future, it's just a good time to show us your military talents. Steppenwolf nodded. No problem, it's just a planet. Then let's go back. After a while, I will take you to receive the Kirita fleet. After speaking, Thanos and Wu Muhou turned their heads. Steppenwolf also nodded. Where the two of them couldn't see, a hint of sarcasm suddenly appeared in the Steppenwolf's eyes. Just wait. I will gradually conquer all the planets in this world. At that time, Darkseid will be able to forgive me. In Loki's room. Loki was wearing the same set of golden armor he wore from Asgard. His face was impassive. The scepter inlaid with mind gem was firmly placed in front of him. To be honest, he has no intention of becoming king in Midgard. He even once thought about fleeing this place. Loki sighs. He thought of his father Odin. Odin had passively fallen into an Odin sleep not long ago. The sleep of the gods is a phenomenon that the gods will only appear when their lifespan is near the end. Odin has voluntarily entered the Odin sleep many times over the last few hundred years. Both Thor and Loki knew that Odin had little time left to live. This is why Loki is so eager to become king. From Loki's point of view, Thor is a guy with muscles and no brains at all. Just look at the things Thor does. If Odin asked Loki to be king of Asgard, he was sure he could do better than Odin. Gee. Loki sighed, and Blue's skin was gradually revealed. It's a pity that he is of the Frost Titan family. Asgard's deadly enemy, no matter what aspect it is, Odin will never let him become the king of Asgard. This is also the main reason why Loki voluntarily left Asgard to wander in space. Just when Loki was thinking carefully about what to do to save Asgard from Thanos' destruction, Thanos suddenly pushed open the door and walked in. Behind him was the Steppenwolf. Let me introduce you. Don't you want to be the king of Midgard? This is my newly appointed leader of the Kirita fleet. He will help you invade Midgard later. Thanos spoke, pointing to Steppenwolf. Loki quickly stood up, and hurriedly said to Steppenwolf, my name is Loki. Steppenwolf dropped his great axe, and reached out to Loki. You can call me Steppenwolf, My favorite thing is to wage war. Loki nodded quickly, and at the same time Loki's hand was held together with Steppenwolf's. The first time Loki held Steppenwolf's hand, he discovered Steppenwolf's strength with an Asgard's secret method. Level Godfather, on the same level as Thanos and Odin. Loki just feels weak for a while. When did the level Godfather become ubiquitous like Chinese cabbage on the roadside? Shield. Eric, what do you think of the working environment here? In the underground of a hidden large area in New York, Agent Filson smiled and asked Dr. Eric, who had just arrived here not long ago. Behind Agent Filson, there was another agent. Hawkeye. Level 7 agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hawkeye looked around curiously. He didn't know that S.H.I.E.L.D. had such a place before. The working environment here is quite good. If I hadn't signed the non-disclosure agreement, I'm afraid I would never have imagined that there are so many weird things in this world. Eric said with a smile. He was one of the people who had previously signed a non-disclosure agreement in New Mexico. Darcy was picked up by the Federal Bureau, and it is said that he joined some special team. And Jane didn't know what S.H.I.E.L.D. was thinking, so she was put back directly, and even sent several bodyguards to Jane, and sent a large sum of money so that Jane could do what she liked with peace of mind. Although Eric didn't know the specific reason, Eric guessed that Jane's incident was probably related to the Thor who claimed to be Thor they met in New Mexico. That's good. Filson smiled, and then looked at the Tesseract not far away where they were experimenting with various methods. Now, does your team have an idea for extracting energy in Tesseract? Filson opened mouths and asked. This is also the main reason why he came here today. Eric glanced at Tesseract with some regret, then shook his head. We have used various methods, but there is no way to urge Tesseract to actively release energy. Director Nick Fury has already ordered you to speed up your progress. If you can decipher the cosmic magic, then you will be forever engraved in the history of the world, and even you will be the next Newton and Einstein. It contains the future of mankind. Filson couldn't help turning his attention to Tesseract. We will try. Eric said seriously, his eyes full of longing. All that matters in life is nothing more than money, power, fame and fortune. If he can actually decipher Tesseract, these things will flock to. Looking at the energetic Eric, Filson nodded indifferently. These guys are much easier to deal with than Tony and Bruce. Filson looked at Hawkeye, who was looking around again. You are guarding here during this time. If there is any problem, you can tell Fury directly. At the same time, if anyone tries to break into this place by force, shoot them to death. Hawkeye patted his own bow. Give it to me. Hell's Kitchen. Jin Bing's mental state during this period was very bad. His subordinates always asked for leave one after another, and then disappeared inexplicably. In a few days, there will be news that one of his subordinates died at home. Originally, he didn't have many loyal subordinates, but only a few dozen, who have been helping him manage the affairs of New York. Now they suddenly died one after another. This had to make Jin Coin suspect that someone was targeting him. Who is it? The Hand and the Society? 10 Rings? Or the gang of Italian ghosts? Jin Bing sat on the sofa with solemn eyes, thinking about the problem carefully. But is anyone really that boring? After killing someone, they like to leave riddles in the victim's home. Who do you think is targeting us? Jin Bin suddenly looked at the Penguin behind him and asked. Penguin shook his head with a smile on his face. I don't know, Jin Bing is the boss. After all, I have been with you for less than a year. Jin Bin nodded, but the doubt in his eyes did not recede at all. When Penguin just joined Jin Bin a year ago, there were many rumors. What Penguin is also beckoning secretly, and what Penguin wants to replace Jin and become the new underground emperor of New York. For that stuff, and never just laughed it off. My family knows my own affairs. Just because he's just a penguin? Why is he? Jin Bing left the society before finishing junior high school. He has seen a lot of dirty things in New York. Even at the age of 30, he replaced the #1 gangster in New York at the time. Became the real underground emperor in New York. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. has to give him face. And Penguin is just the owner of a small nightclub. In the past, Jin never put Penguin in his eyes, but it is different now. Some time ago, Jin Bing also secretly sent his men to investigate the Penguin. It's just that the results obtained are not satisfactory. Penguin is simply too clean. Often the person who is the cleanest is the most abnormal. Jin Bing knocked on the coffee table one after another. Suddenly he picked up the phone, dialed a number and said, "Call me Penguin, I have something to ask him." Yes. Bullseye on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment, then spoke. After Jin Bing hung up the phone, Bullseye directly threw a call to Penguin, who was sleeping at home. Hello, who is it? Penguin spoke in a very bad tone. It's me, Bullseye. Bullseye paused, and then said, Kim told you to go to him now. I think he might have suspected you of betraying him. Oh, Bagan. Penguin picked up a basin of cold water beside the bed, washed his face, and woke up. This is normal. I have been planning for almost a year, and I must have recruited many cadres. Some people are Jinbin's diehards, and they will definitely tell Jinbin the news. But in the past, Jin didn't need me to make money, so he didn't kill me. Now that his subordinates are having accidents one after another, his first suspect must be me. The Penguin said indifferently. Then what do you want to do now? Bullseye on the other end of the phone froze for a moment, then asked. I haven't made up my mind yet. After all, in my expectation, I'm not prepared to start a decisive battle so soon. The Penguin laughed twice. But who made my brother come here so soon? Penguin put on his tuxedo suit, grabbed his umbrella, and said, Where's Erica? I don't know, but there is a high probability that Erica is at her boyfriend's house now. The Penguin nodded, and then said, Call Erica and tell her to kidnap Jinbin's son no matter what method she uses. We'll see if we can succeed this time. New. Bullseye said something, then hung up the phone. Penguin squinted his eyes and smiled, then walked out of the villa directly. Tell my brothers, come fight against Gold with me today. Winners have everything, losers. The man didn't speak, and the 4 bodyguards all knew what the Penguin meant. Don't worry, boss, no matter what other people think, I will never betray you. A big black man knelt on the ground to express his loyalty. I used to work with Gold, and I couldn't earn 50 a year. Since I followed you, the boss, I have more than 20 a month. Several other bodyguards nodded again and again. The fact is true, Penguin may indeed have some shortcomings in other places, but he gives money very generously. Almost everyone who followed Penguin was several times as many as they followed Jinbin before. A famous philosopher once said that as long as there is 100% profit, then God will even fall into hell. Now it's not 100%, but hundreds of percent. In this case, almost all former Jinbin subordinates are loyal to Penguin. The Penguin nodded in satisfaction, and then spoke. The Penguin casually pointed to one of his bodyguards. Then he said, Go and gather all the people who defected to us. I am afraid that today will be the decisive battle between me and Jinbin. The bodyguard nodded, turned and left the villa. The Penguin got into a Rolls-Royce, and closed his eyes in the back seat to meditate. Jinbin is now in his mansion, because his subordinates die tragically almost every day, so he is also worrying about this matter. He hasn't slept well for several nights in a row. Jin Coin rubbed his brows weakly. Now for Jinbin, the most important thing is not to find the real culprit, but to need a scapegoat. Because if his subordinate died tragically and he still sat here indifferently, then his prestige would drop to the extreme. And right now he was suspicious of Penguin. The Penguin also seems to have such ideas more or less. The subordinate he sent to learn from the Penguin a year ago also almost learned the business of the Penguin to the point of 7,788. It can be said that Penguin is of no great use now, and is an abandoned child who can be discarded at will. It is for this reason that Jin chose to let the Penguin be the scapegoat. Boom boom boom. Just when Jinbin was thinking carefully with his eyes closed, there was a sudden knock on the door. Jin Coin opened his eyes, and said lightly, Come in. Boss Jinbin, Penguin has come downstairs. A younger brother in a suit hurried in and said. Jinbin nodded, and said with a calm face, Bring him up to me directly. If he dares to resist, he will be executed directly. The younger brother nodded and left Jin's office. Not long after, the sound of 2 people's footsteps came from outside the door. Boss Jinbin is waiting for you inside, let me in quickly. The younger brother pushed the Penguin directly. The Penguin turned his head and gave his younger brother a cold look, then came to the sofa opposite Jinbin and sat down. Penguin lit a cigarette for himself, then squinted at Jinbin. Boss Jinbin called me over so late, what's the matter? Why did I call you here so late? Don't you know yourself? Jinbin snorted coldly, then stared at Penguin. If you don't tell me, I really don't know. Penguin spread his hands. You. Jinbin just wanted to get angry, but immediately sat down again. Very good, you are very good. Why don't you come and guess what I am asking you to do today? Jinbin half lied on the sofa behind him and said to Penguin. I don't want to guess about the boss, you'd better just tell me. Penguin's indifferent appearance caused Jinbin to simmer with anger. Penguin, do you really think I dare not kill you? Suddenly Jinbin stood up abruptly, and then ruthlessly pinched Penguin's neck with a big hand. Kill me? If I'm right, you called me here today because of this matter. Enduring the pain of suffocation, Penguin fixed his eyes on Jinbin. In other words, that's why you called me here today, right? That's right. Now that the words have come to this point, Jin does not intend to hide it. No way. I haven't been able to find the person who killed so many of my men, so I can only find you to replace it. But don't worry, if I catch that person in the future, I will mourn for you. When you arrive, you will be Tian's loyal minister. Jin Bin's eyes narrowed into a slit, he said while looking at the penguin who was about to suffocate. Yeah? Penguin moved his fingers with difficulty. Suddenly, a flying dart shot at Jin Bin at an extremely fast speed. Jin Bin was caught off guard, and the bone of his hand was directly pierced by the flying dart. Jin Bing, who was still holding the penguin man's hand just now, immediately let it go because of the severe pain. Bullseye. There was cold sweat on Jin Bin's forehead, he gritted his teeth and roared loudly. That's right, the one who shot the flying darts was Bullseye. Bullseye can turn everything around it into a deadly weapon. Bullseye. I thought I treated you well, why would you betray me? Jin asked with some puzzlement. Bullseye stepped out of the shadows. You used to treat me well, and even I wanted to be loyal to you at that time. Bullseye said slowly. It's just that in my opinion, you don't seem to be so ignorant. Obviously, I already have me, and I just went in and squatted for a month. Why did you find someone else? Erica. That woman you're looking for took money that was supposed to be mine. Bullseye slowly walked in front of Jin Bing, and then looked down at Jin Bing. Cold sweat broke out on Jin Bing's forehead, and he even felt that he couldn't straighten up because of the pain. That Bullseye guy, I don't know what is painted on the flying darts, which can magnify the human body's own senses countless times. You come back. As long as you come back and swear never to betray me again, I can give you $5 million. Jin gritted his teeth and said, 5 million? Bullseye said with some disdain. It seems that you really don't care about your own life at all. Bullseye's eyes were full of indifference. Wait a moment. Kim stalled for time. I'll give you 10 million USD, 15 million. Seeing that the Bullseye was still approaching him, Jin gritted his teeth and pushed the price to the extreme. Finally, Bullseye walked up to Jin Bin, and when he was about to squat down and look down at Jin Bin suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Bullseye's neck, then slapped Bullseye away. A silver-white anesthetic tube fell to the floor. Jin looked at the two with disdain, then slowly stood up. The anesthetic had already relieved his pain. Jin Bin shook his arm indifferently, and walked quickly in front of the two of them. It seems that I guessed correctly. Originally, I just wanted to find a scapegoat, but I didn't expect that I found the real culprit by mistake. Jin Bing looked at Penguin coldly. It's not just you, even I'm surprised. Penguin raised his head and looked at Jin Bin, he didn't panic at all. When you called me over today, I thought I was exposed, but I never thought that you just want to kill the donkey. Jin Bin was very annoyed by Penguin's unafraid attitude. He has been in New York for so many years. Sitting in his current position, even the mayor of New York has to give him 3 points of courtesy. This Penguin has only been under his command for a year, and he only has a bullseye. How dare he be so arrogant? I'm really curious about what your confidence is. Jin Bin squinted his eyes at the Penguin, and then spoke slowly. Kim didn't move. He was waiting for Penguin to give him an answer. My confidence. Penguin suddenly laughed. The sound travels between several floors. You're about to find out. Suddenly there was the sound of gunfire downstairs. F*K. Jack, what are you doing? How dare you betray Kim and the boss? Damn things, what are you doing? Why are you killing me? We are our own people. Fact. These guys must belong to that scumbag Penguin, come on. Suddenly, a missile entered Jin Bin's crowd. Boom. Huge amounts of explosions sounded, and Penguin picked up his umbrella in a calm manner. This is my confidence, what do you think? Jin Bin. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking at the chaotic crowd below, Penguin suddenly turned his head to look at Jin and said. Jin Bing's face was very dark, he gritted his teeth and said, very good. Penguin, you really impress me today. Jin Bin looked down at the fierce gun battle below and the occasional explosions. He only felt that his heart was bleeding. You must know that those who killed were all his people. Even the field below is his now. Jin couldn't bear it anymore, he flew towards the Penguin directly. Careful. Bullseye said quickly, and then ran towards Jin Bing. But the distance between the two, a little too far. The distant water cannot save the near fire, so Bullseye can only watch Jin helplessly and rush towards the Penguin. The Penguin didn't panic at all, and he didn't even change his standing posture. By the way, I have another secret I want to tell you. I'm not as powerless as you think. All of a sudden, the Penguin opened the umbrella he had never used before, and Jin was caught off guard and directly hit the Penguin's umbrella, and was bounced back to the ground. Annoyed, He directly picked up the pistol on his waist and fired at the penguin. But Penguin just put his umbrella in front of him. After the bullet hit the umbrella, all of them were bounced off. You're not the only one with guns. Suddenly a bullet fired from Penguin's umbrella handle. It hit Jin Bing directly on the shoulder. Jin Bin snorted, and he also raised his head abruptly. I also have a secret I want to tell you. Jin Bin acted as if he hadn't been shot. He stood up directly, and even smiled at the penguin. Jin Bing took off his suit slowly, revealing the large muscles inside. The bullet fired by the penguin's pistol just now got stuck in Jin Bin's flesh, and it didn't even hurt Jin Bin's bones. This is enough to prove how terrifying the density of Jin Bin's muscles is. I'm not a fat man like the rumors outside. You are one of the few people who can see my true face. Jin moved his neck a bit, then clenched his fists fiercely and said to the penguin. Come on. Let me see how much money you have. How dare you snatch Lao Tzu's position as the underground emperor of New York. Jin rushed directly towards Penguin. This time, Bullseye was in front of the penguin, and he directly hit Jin Bing in one fell swoop. But Jin Bin's power is too terrifying. Although Bullseye is also very powerful, but he is powerful in hidden weapons, so naturally he cannot compare with Jin Bin. I saw that Bullseye was directly sent flying by Jin Bing's punch. Jin glanced at Bullseye disdainfully, then sneered and said, I just fancy your elusive assassination ability. Do you think I really have to be you? What's more, if I don't have any skills, how can I sit in this position just because I have money? Jin Bin moved his wrist, and then said coldly. It's been a long time since I've had a hand with anyone else, but you've made me find that youthful feeling back then. Jin said with enthusiasm. Snort. Penguin suddenly laughed. My trump card is not Bullseye. My trump card is him. Suddenly, the penguin spoke. A beautiful woman with a graceful figure slowly walked in from the outside, holding a little boy in his hand. Richard? Jin Bin's eyes were about to crack. He looked at the penguin angrily, and then said coldly, Erica, let go of my son. What exactly do you want? Don't you even understand the most basic morals? Moral. Penguin sneered. What is that? Can it be eaten? Or can it make me the underground emperor of New York? To be honest, I have been coveting your position for a long time. Penguin walked to Jin Bin's side, and whispered in his ear. I'll give you this position and you'll get me and my son out of New York. Jin Bin suddenly gave up resistance and said dejectedly. I don't believe you. Then how do you trust me? Penguin opened his mouth and smiled, then took out a tube of reagents from his pocket. The green liquid in the formula is not a good thing at first sight. Let me introduce to you. This is the hypnotic ability potion that I specially extracted from the purple man's genes. As long as you drink this potion, I will promise you everything about you. It's just that I want to see your determination to retire. Penguin's tone was full of temptation. Maybe you wake up tomorrow morning and find out you're on vacation in the Maldives with your wife and kids. Gritting his teeth, Jin Bin looked at Richard, who was constantly in Erica's hands, and then at the penguin and Bullseye in front of him. After a long time, his tightly locked brows suddenly relaxed completely, his eyes were full of decadence, and even his originally heavy waist could not help but bend down. I hope you don't lie to me, otherwise I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost. Jin Bin stared closely at the penguin and said. Definitely, I am a man of credibility. Penguin nodded in satisfaction. Subduing others without fighting is indeed a very good idea. Jin Bin sighed, and then took the test tube of green in Penguin's hand. He glanced at Richard with some nostalgia, then closed his eyes without any hesitation, picked up the test tube and pierced it into the skin. As the test tube slowly advanced, Jin Bing closed his eyes. Remember. Don't break the contract, Dad. Richard's eyes were full of hatred, and he looked at Penguin angrily. Tut tisk tisk. This little look. Are you trying to take revenge on me? The penguin saw that Jin had fallen, and he came directly in front of Richard and grabbed Richard's hair. The thin Richard was lifted up directly. Look at that little hateful look. Do you want to kill me to avenge your father? Richard nodded without any hesitation. As expected of Jin Bing's son, it's just tougher than I imagined. Penguin praised without hesitation. Since you are so stubborn, then you can walk home by yourself. Let's help you send Dad back, shall we? Richard didn't speak. If you don't speak, then I will take it as your agreement. Penguin squatted down and touched Richard's head, then said to the two behind him, Let's go. Let Richard Faith go back by himself. I want to see if this little boy can survive Hell's Kitchen is back at his home in Queens. After speaking, Penguin left directly. Bullseye and Erica directly supported Jin Bin with one foot and walked outside. Not long after the penguin left, the fighting outside gradually stopped. Both sides lose out. The penguin people left with the penguin, planning to have a good sleep tonight and come back to take over tomorrow. Richard stood alone in Jin Bing's office, his stubborn eyes just now became a little helpless. He walked silently to the corner and squatted down, then buried his head in his arms. At this moment, the sound of tap, tap, leather shoes sounded from outside. Richard immediately raised his head vigilantly. I saw a man in a green suit appearing in front of Richard. Riddler. The Riddler squatted down in front of Richard and grabbed Richard's hair fiercely. Penguin is really benevolent and merciful, and he will really let you go with just one side of the story. The Riddler's face was full of ferocity. Why did he let you go? He has been the boss for so many years, and now he has come to this world. Is his brain flooded? The Riddler grabbed Richard's neck tightly, and Richard grabbed the Riddler's hand and tried to break free from him. How dare you resist? The Riddler burst out laughing, pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose, and suddenly Nurse Chad smashed against the wall. Puff. A mouthful of blood spurted out directly from Richard's mouth. The Riddler looked at the scene in front of him with a happy face. Seeing the circle of purple bruises that had appeared on Richard's neck, the Riddler lowered his head and grabbed Richard's neck to pick him up. Richard clutched his throat tightly. Riddler also took out a test tube from behind. He smiled and said to Richard, "Do you know what this is? The name of this thing is adrenaline. It can keep a person awake in extreme pain." After speaking, he didn't care about Richard's feelings at all, and directly pierced the needle hole. Feel the fear. The Riddler had a sick smile on his face. Why the Penguin let you go? Why? The Riddler slowly pushed the needle in, and then directly took out a blunt knife that had not been sterilized and was full of rust from his pocket. Hey, why should he let you go if you still step into it? In Jin Bing's office, Richard's heart-piercing screams of pain came out, and lasted for a whole night. The next day, Jin B slowly opened his eyes from the villa in Queens. He stood up holding his still aching forehead. Suddenly, Jin remembered something, and he hurried to Richard's room. Richard? Where's Richard? Is Richard back? In Richard's room, it was Vanessa who hadn't slept all night and had thick dark circles under her eyes. Vanessa's eyes were already red from crying so much at night. She knelt on the ground and looked at Jin Bing blankly. He said in a hoarse tone, "I told you a long time ago, I have to get out quickly, now you are happy." "What did you say?" Jin Bing said with a flattering face. "Vanessa, I have decided to listen to you. In a few days, our family of 3 will travel to the Maldives. Can we leave this dirty place in New York? Where is Richard? Let me meet him quickly." Huh? Want to wake up now? Vanessa didn't even look up at Kim and glanced at him. He directly threw the photos in his hand to Jin Bing. "I'm asking about our son, not a blur of flesh and blood." Jin Bing's heart skipped a beat suddenly, and he hurriedly yelled at Vanessa. "Our son? Isn't he in the picture?" Vanessa said coldly. "I don't care what you want to do, you have to avenge him. My son died because of you." That guy Penguin dared to lie to me." Seeing that there was no human flesh and blood in the photo, Suo suddenly fell to his knees on the ground. Looking at Vanessa with blank eyes, Jin Bing suddenly realized what his weakness was. His biggest weakness is that he talks too much about social morality. I really shouldn't have trusted Penguin. Jin also hugged godless Natasha Romanoff into his arms, and then spoke comfortingly. "What's the use of saying this now?" Vanessa seemed to have found a vent, and slapped all her negative emotions on Jin Bing's face. "Since I married you, how many times have I persuaded you? But you have been prevaricated every time. Are you happy to see your son now?" Vanessa picked up the photo on the ground, and then slammed it in front of Jin Bing. Jin closed his eyes in pain. "Vanessa, you. Don't force me." "Forcing you? Is it forcing you to take revenge on Richard?" "Jin Bing. Richard is our son, and now she has turned into this bloody picture. Can you imagine what he went through before he died? What is it?" Vanessa pretended to be a ghost, and looked at Jin Bing fiercely. I know. I really know." Jin Bing trembled with his hands, he closed his eyes tightly and dared not look at that picture. He really loves his wife and son, and he would give everything for them, even the precious position of underground emperor in New York. Now, Richard is dead. In Jin Bing's mind, there is only one remaining 2 iron chains that bound Jin Bing. But just relying on an iron chain, how could this be able to suppress Jin Bing? The pain of bereavement constantly rubbed Jin Bing's reason. At a certain moment, Jin Bing stood up suddenly. He hugged Vanessa heavily times, and then mercilessly broke Vanessa's neck under Vanessa's extremely puzzled eyes. Jin Bing's eyes were red. He looked at Vanessa, who was lying on the ground and died, and gently wiped Vanessa's eyes. "Don't worry. I will avenge my son's revenge and your revenge. Did you know? Richard is dead, and you are my only weakness in this world. As long as you are dead, then I can take revenge without worry. You will definitely agree with me, right, Vanessa? Jinping is like a beast losing his mind, talking to himself over Vanessa's dead body. The suit that was bound on his body was directly split by Jin Bin's muscles that exploded with all his strength, and then Jin Bin jumped directly from the third floor. Revenge. Revenge. I want revenge. Are you crazy? Waking up early in the morning, Penguin saw the blood-stained Riddler standing in front of his window, and then told him calmly that he had killed Richard. Penguin felt like he was about to collapse. Why did you say it now? Even if you really killed Richard, you should contact me directly as soon as possible, instead of sending me the photos of you killing Richard. The Penguin sat on the edge of the bed and grabbed the Riddler by the collar. But in Riddler's eyes, this is a sign that Penguin has him in his heart. The Riddler suddenly said, "Don't worry, I won't make it difficult for you. I will go to Jinbin in person in a while. As long as I die, he won't blame you. Don't mess with me." The Penguin sat back on the bed and kicked the Riddler hard. The Riddler was kicked directly to the ground. But he wasn't angry at all. Just when Penguin was about to continue teaching Riddler, the phone beside the bed suddenly rang. "Boss, it's not good. Kim is going crazy." Penguin's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and glanced at the Riddler on the ground, and then asked, "What happened to Jin Bin when you just said that?" "Jin is crazy. Boss." The voice on the other side spoke quickly, with a short and hasty voice. "It's like seeing something terrible. Jin went straight into the Bingshan Promenade nightclub and smashed it up. Not only that, he is demolishing the building now. He also threatened us to tear it down if you don't show up in 10 minutes. Boss, you better come here quickly. Try to see if you can control him. I'll pass right away." The iceberg corridor is not his property, it's Lin's property. Even if it really is him who dies, he must not let the Bingshan corridor go wrong. Otherwise, how could he be worthy of Lin's trust in him? Thinking of this, the Penguin gave the Riddler a cold look. "Or I'll go. As long as Jin Bin kills me, then everything will be lifted. Don't mess with me." The Penguin didn't answer the Riddler's words, but rubbed his head in distress. "Jin Bin's most important thing is his wife and son, which is why I dare not kill them. Because I know that after killing them, Jin Bin will definitely go crazy." As he said that, the Penguin sighed. "The reason why I'm sure I got the deposit is because he still has his own wife and son, and now I really don't know what to do. It's useless to say anything now, come with me. Otherwise, if the boss's iceberg corridor is demolished, then we'll just kill ourselves and apologize." Riddler apparently also realized the seriousness of the matter. He hurriedly got up from the ground, gritted his teeth and said, "Why don't you say that the Bingshan corridor belongs to the boss? I thought it was yours. Let's leave quickly." After speaking, the two drove directly to the Bingshan corridor. The first floor of it at the moment has long been smashed to pieces by Jin Bing, and there is almost no place to sit on. Jin Bing was standing in the ruins on the first floor. When he heard the beeping sound, Jin Bing turned his head. After seeing the license plate hanging on it, his legs exerted strength instantly, and then he smashed through the gate and rushed out. "I thought you were going to hide from me all the time, but I didn't expect you to come out so soon. Let me guess, this Iceberg Promenade nightclub is very commemorative to you, or you don't want me to if you ruin this place, even if you lose your own life, you don't want me to destroy it. Hey." Jin Bing's tone was completely different from before. He was even a little calm like Jin Bin. But the more this happened, the more uncertain Penguin's heart was. Kim is completely insane, and an extremely calm lunatic. Penguin has nothing to do with this madman. He couldn't help looking at the Riddler. You know, in Gotham City, the Riddler is known as one of the smartest people in the world. The Riddler did not disappoint the Penguin. He took a step forward and stood in front of Penguin. After Jin Bing turned his gaze to him, Riddler smiled and said, "I think you must have seen the photo I sent your wife. I have to say, after coming to this world, this is the first time for me to experience such a wonderful torture." The Riddler licked his somewhat chapped lips, and then spoke to Jin Bing. "Are you the one who killed my son?" Jin Bing's eyes widened all of a sudden, the bloodshot eyes burst out, and his voice became angry and hoarse. "It was you who killed my son." But suddenly, Kim calmed down. The Riddleman squinted his eyes. He couldn't figure out what Jin Bin was thinking, but he still looked at Jin Bin warily, then nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. I was the one who killed your son." The Riddler wanted to piss off Jin Bin as much as possible. Kim is just too powerful. Even if the bullet hit Jin Bing's body, it could only penetrate into his skin and scratch him, without causing any substantial damage at all. "To be honest, I also want to thank you." Jin shook his head. "Thank me? What are you thanking me for killing your son?" The Riddler couldn't help but sneered. Jinbin looked very serious, and he nodded heavily towards the Riddler. Yes, I just want to thank you for killing my son. As soon as this remark came out, the speaker went straight to the point. He hurriedly said, "What are you talking about? I killed your son, and even tore him into pieces. You want to thank me now?" The Riddler constantly spoke at an extremely fast speed, trying to provoke Jinbin. "You know what? I gave your son a dozen shots of epinephrine. I tortured him for 7 or 8 hours. You know the look on his face when he was dying and calling his father's name." After the Penguin finished speaking, he sniffed his clothes intoxicated. It seemed that there were still bloodstains on the clothes that had not been cleaned up. These words really had an impact on Kim. "Shut up. You shut up. Don't talk." Jin Bing covered his ears, as if begging the Riddler. His eyes are constantly switching between anger and calmness. Everyone looked at Jin Bin blankly. After an unknown amount of time, Jin Bin finally raised his head. Jin raised his head, and then his eyes narrowed. "Yeah. You're right, I'm just thanking you for killing my son Richard." Jin Bing spoke in a definite tone. "What did you say?" The Riddler looked disbelieving. A wicked smile appeared on the corner of Jin Bin's mouth. "I said I thank you for killing my son." As he spoke, a few teardrops flowed from the corners of Jin Z's eyes. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have realized that my son and my wife are my shackles. You killed my son and made me realize this problem. Don't make me understand that if you want to become the real underground emperor of New York, then you have to abandon useless family affection and all your weaknesses." As he spoke, Jin Bin's eyes were full of madness, and the paranoid bloodshot eyes were almost filling Jin Bin. "It was because of you that I made up my mind. I killed Vanessa without any hesitation." Jin Bin laughed out loud. "From now on, I don't have any weaknesses. It's just you and Penguin. Why do you fight with me?" Jin Bing's muscles suddenly became tense. "But I promised my son that I will avenge him. Now that I have found the real culprit, it is so natural that there is no reason not to avenge him." As he spoke, he rushed directly to the Riddler. Then he kicked the Riddler away. The Penguin could only watch anxiously, and he hurriedly said to the bodyguard beside him, "Where are Bullseye and Erica? Why haven't they come over yet? Boss and the others are already on their way here. The two of them's homes are a bit far from here, and it will take about a minute to get here." 5 minutes? The Penguin looked worriedly at the Riddler lying on the ground. Seeing Jin Bin, who kept approaching the Riddler, the Penguin gritted his teeth. Suddenly, Penguin picked up the umbrella in his hand and rushed straight up. "Kim didn't have anything against me. I told him to kill Richard. I'm the real mastermind behind it." "Oh, is it so?" Jin, hearing what the Penguin said, he really gave up on the Riddler, who had been beaten to death, and rushed towards the Penguin. Seeing Jin Bin's fist waving towards him, Penguin quickly raised his umbrella. But how powerful Jin Bin is! In just a few minutes, the Penguin with the umbrella was a little overwhelmed. Oops. Penguin's heart suddenly skipped a beat. I saw a huge force that was several times stronger than before, and the Penguin's umbrella fell out of his hand in an instant. "You keep blocking me," Jin Bin said with a look of disdain. "Say it." Jin Bin raised his iron fist and hit Penguin directly on the head. If this punch was implemented, then Penguin would be almost dead. The Riddler wanted to come and save him, but it was too far away. What's more, the Riddler's arm was broken by Jin Bing. Just at the very moment, a blind stick suddenly stood in front of Penguin. Jin Bing's iron fist hit the blind stick mercilessly, but the straight stick only retreated slightly. Penguin raised his head, and saw a man with 2 small horns on his head, wearing a red mask, and wearing a red battlesuit suddenly appeared in front of him. "Jin Bin, stop." Kim did not recognize the man standing between them. The two can be said to be old enemies, not only have new enmity, but also old enmity. "Daredevil, are you going to stop me too? Don't you know that these 2 guys in front of you killed my son?" That's right, the man who suddenly appeared was Matt Murdock, Erica's blind lawyer boyfriend. Matt nodded. "I definitely know about this matter. In fact, I have ambushed here a long time ago." Matt looked at Jin Bin, and then said, "I have already learned about your affairs, and I am very sorry for the death of your wife and children. It's just that you shouldn't take personal revenge, you should believe that the Federation will punish them." "Federation? Do you mean the idiots in America or the idiots in New York?" Jin Bing snorted coldly. "Just relying on those guys who can fool people with just a little money, how do you think?" Having said that, Jin Bin sighed, and he looked at Daredevil coldly. "If you leave now, I can pretend that nothing happened. If you continue to help them, then you can stay here today." Jin didn't give Daredevil any time to think about it. He took advantage of Daredevil's stunned effort and punched Daredevil on the shoulder. The sound of scapular cleft clearly entered everyone's ears. Matt gritted his teeth and half knelt on the ground, covering the place where Jin Bing's sneak attack interrupted him. Damn it. Stop it. Another stick appeared, and Erica waved the long stick in her hand and fought with Jin in an instant. Fack. Another eyesore. Erica, I've treated you well, so why are you betraying me? Jin Bin gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Erica. After hearing Jin Bin's words, Matt looked at the person who blocked the attack for him just now. That's my girlfriend. Erica. Be careful, I'll help you. Matt hurriedly endured the severe pain in his shoulder and rushed forward. Now it was too late for him to think about why Erica also knew martial arts, and why Erica appeared here. He rushed forward to relieve Erica's pressure from Jin Bing. You two husbands. I want you dead. Kim was incapable of rage. If Matt is the only one alive with Erica, then he won't leave them alone. But if it is 2-1, it seems a little stretched. For a moment, Jin Bin was beaten back by the combination of the two. At this moment, Bullseye finally rushed over. Sorry, I developed some special poisons yesterday, so I came here a little late. The Penguin breathed a sigh of relief, then helped the Riddler on the ground, and said, It's good to be able to come. Can you guys deal with Jin Bin? Leave it to me. The medicine I developed last night is to deal with Jin Bin. As he spoke, the pupils of Bullseye shrank suddenly, and the muscles in his hands tensed. I saw him take out a glass tube, then picked up a sharp stone and dipped some mucus in it. These are the poisonous non of the most poisonous species on Earth, the poisonous sword frog, which he bought from a mysterious businessman on the black market yesterday. The toxin inside will kill a common man if it sticks to his skin. Bullseye just glanced in the direction of the three fighting, and then threw the stone in his hand as if hesitation. The stone pierced Jin Bin's arm precisely, and all the venom entered Jin Bin's nervous system. In just a few seconds, Jin Bin lay down on the ground with a face of pain. White's poisonous froth could not be stopped coming out of his mouth. After a few more seconds, Jin Bin completely tilted his head and died suddenly on the spot. Penguin couldn't help feeling a little emotional watching this scene. No matter how brilliant Jin Bing was before, but when he died, there was not even a single person buried with him. Matt looked at the dead Jin Bin, and then at Erica next to him. He suddenly grabbed Erica, flew up to the roof, and then left. The Penguin breathed a sigh of relief, and then said, From today onwards, I will be the veritable underground emperor of New York. Follow me, brothers, eat delicious food and drink spicy food. The people below applauded. What are you talking about? That guy Jin Bing is dead. Nick Fury picked up the phone in his hand, and then said in a bit of astonishment. That's right. The person on the other end of the phone spoke. The current owner of Hell's Kitchen has changed to a man named Penguin, and beside him is a man named Riddler who appeared not long ago. Penguin? Riddler. Nick Fury. I was stunned for a moment, and then said, Have you checked their information? I checked, but found nothing. I only found out that Penguin suddenly appeared in New York a year ago. At that time, a nightclub called Iceberg Promenade suddenly appeared in Hell's Kitchen, I am afraid. The agent on the other end of the phone was Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff came here to investigate a drug case after recovering from her injuries some time ago, but unexpectedly found a more serious matter. Mommy F***K. Nick Fury went into a rage. The Penguin and the Riddler have been active under our noses for a year. For a whole year, if you didn't make a mistake, I'm afraid we would not have discovered this matter. Where the hell do these guys come from? Nick Fury rubbed his eyebrows wearily. So much has happened in recent times. It seems that since Tony announced that he is Iron Man, New York has been in a state of chaos all this time, and all kinds of strange things happen every once in a while. Thinking of this, Nick Fury sighed. He picked up the phone in his hand and dialed one of the numbers directly. Hello. There was a panting voice on the other end of the phone, and Ruth was exercising. Bruce, I found 2 people who may be from your world. Do you have time to come and take a look now? Our world. Bruce froze for a moment, then nodded and said, I see, I'll be there right away. Bruce took a shower, changed into a decent suit, and drove to the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. After arriving at Shandongju, Bruce took the elevator directly to Nick Fury's office. As soon as he entered the door, Bruce couldn't wait to say, Do you have any photos of them? Show me. Nick Fury nodded. Then the photos of Penguin and Riddler, which Natasha Romanoff secretly took, were adjusted on the big screen. Penguin and Riddler? Bruce said in surprise. You know both of them? Nick Fury asked hastily. Bruce nodded. The city I live in is called Gotham City. With that said, Bruce pointed to the Penguin. This guy once sat in the position of the underground boss of Gotham City for a while. As for this, he's the Riddler. He thinks he's the most intelligent person in the world. And this guy has a special fascination with crime. He always likes to write his riddles at crime scenes. Does that mean that these two people are not good people? Bruce nodded. They're really not a good thing. Bruce also knows exactly what Nick Fury means. There are too many people crossing over now. He, Diana, Joker, Alfred, and now Penguin and Riddler. He, Diana, and Alfred couldn't move. As far as Joker is concerned, Nick Fury can't catch him, and now Nick Fury doesn't want to really anger Joker. After all, Joker is just a little too smart. So now the only thing to do is to find a breakthrough in Penguin and Riddler. Nick Fury was also relieved to learn that the relationship between these two people and Bruce was not good. He called Bruce over just to confirm this. As long as it is confirmed that Bruce has nothing to do with these two people, then he can boldly let the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. arrest them. Nick Fury is curious too, after all. How did these people from another universe cross over? One day he will understand the secret. The two fell silent suddenly. After all, the relationship between the two is not very familiar, so there is nothing to say. Just when Bruce was about to leave, a phone call came in out of the blue. Diddy. Nick Fury picked up the phone, glanced at the person above, and then answered the phone directly. Regardless of Bruce, he asked directly, "Hawkeye, what's going on over there?" Hawkeye on the opposite side said without the slightest turbulence. "Yes, there are indeed some situations here. I don't know why just now, Tesseract suddenly started to riot." He turned on an energy source. Energy source? Can it be turned off? Hawkeye on the other end of the phone looked at Eric. Eric shook his head helplessly. "No way, otherwise, Director Nick Fury, you'd better come and see for yourself." Nick Fury nodded, then said to Bruce, "I have something." Bruce also nodded. "I'm going back to study the armor too. New York at night is beautiful. There are almost a sea of people on the street." After Nick Fury came out of the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., he headed directly to the underground base where he studied the Tesseract. After arriving at the underground base, K. Fury took out his ID card and showed it to the guards, then hurried to the bottom place where Tesseract was studied. The outermost here is a dense building built by the military for fear of leaking secrets. There are more than 10 helicopters patrolling the sky around the clock. For no other reason than Tesseract is simply too important to the whole person. Now, because of the Tesseract's sudden burst of power, several neighboring districts have dispatched the New York Police Department to take action. Urgent notice, evacuation order confirmed, please leave immediately. All the civilians are running away in a hurry. Cursing and swearing came out of their mouths. Damn, I'm never going back to New York, I'm going to live in Los Angeles. That's right. I don't know what's wrong with New York. Something happens every once in a while. Has he hit something evil? Go directly abroad and stay away from this disputed place. Among those who wanted to flee the area, a Chevrolet stood out. Because there is some traffic jam around, so K. Fury said directly, "Start the flight mode." Beep. Flight mode is activated. The next moment Nick Fury's Chevrolet flew up, and then quickly headed towards the base. When he arrived at the base, Nick Fury parked his car in the parking lot, and then quickly came to the place where space magic was studied. What happened? As soon as Nick Fury came in, he couldn't wait to ask Hawkeye. "I can't say a word or two, so you should see for yourself." Hawkeye stepped aside. Nick Fury nodded and walked straight in. "I saw that all the scientists inside were sweating coldly, and everyone tried their best to turn off the energy source of Tesseract. Dr. Selvig observed a burst of energy from the Tesseract an hour ago. Then the source suddenly appeared. Our scientists tried everything, but none of them were able to turn it off." Listening to Hawkeye's words, Nick Fury rolled his eyes and asked, "Has anyone done anything to the Rubik's Cube during this time?" Hawkeye shook his head. "No, everyone is using machines for remote control, and no one is close to the Rubik's Cube. So I speculate that this may be the result of the Rubik's Cube being activated by itself." "The Rubik's Cube activates by itself?" Nick Fury froze for a moment, then looked at the huge amounts of blue energy source in the center of the laboratory. "What's its energy level now?" Nick Fury is worthy of being a 10th level agent, he calmed down quickly. "It was rising constantly, and Selvig couldn't control it, so we ordered the evacuation of people in the surrounding area. Civilians shouldn't be involved in this sort of thing, you're right." Nick Fury nodded in satisfaction. "How long will it take for all to evacuate?" "About half an hour." Nick Fury pondered for a while, and then said, "Faster, within 10 minutes, let the army assist you." Hawkeye behind Nick Fury nodded. Then directly issued an order to the outside agent. At this moment, Selvig said, "Sir, it may be futile to evacuate the crowd. If we can't control the Tesseract, then it's no use for them to hide in Cape Tiania." "Then let them wait here to die?" Nick Fury said coldly. This time, Selvig stopped talking. He's a mad scientist, but not a fool. If you can't control it, all will be withdrawn according to the technical department. The same is true for the second stage prototype. Sir, is this important? It doesn't seem to be the top priority. Selvig couldn't help but question. Nick Fury gave him a cold look. Even at the moment before the destruction of the Earth, we must do our own work well. After speaking, Nick Fury ignored the chattering Selvig, but came to the energy source. Eric was looking at the energy source in front of him with cold sweat on his face, constantly using various data to try to close it. Dr. Eric, tell me about the situation. What do we know now? Eric nodded, wiped the cold sweat off his head and said, the Tesseract is in an abnormal state. Will it be a false alarm? No, that doesn't look like it. The Tesseract isn't just active now, it's reacting. Like chemistry, two active substances must react when brought together. Did you try to unplug him? Eric sighed. Definitely. We've tried everything we can think of. It's a power source, we try to cut it off, but it keeps restarting. If it's saturated. Nick Fury couldn't wait to interrupt Eric at this moment. Isn't this exactly what we need? Dr. Eric. Mastering the energy in the universe is mastering infinite energy, which is an infinite resource. I know. Eric glanced at Fury and said. But we have no way to grasp it now. The calculation is far from being completed. It is still constantly emitting interference waves, radiation, electromagnetic waves are like spreading some signal to another place. Definitely these are nothing serious, just low-intensity gamma rays. Gamma rays? Nick Fury's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and then he said coldly. This is not a small problem, it's a big problem. Hawkeye also came to Nick Fury at this time. I've been here for the last few days. No instant messaging, no manipulation by Selvig, no outside connections and nothing else coming in here. If someone is really playing tricks, it must not be this end. This end? Nick Fury didn't react for a while. Definitely. Hawkeye nodded. Didn't Dr. Eric just say that? This energy source is equivalent to the collision of two chemical elements. We have one here, so there must be one at the end of this energy source. And this Rubik's Cube originally is a gateway to the other side of the universe, right? Just as Nick Fury was about to speak, the energy source suddenly began to riot. Sir, it's bad. Nang Huang started to climb up. Power up. Nick Fury looked at the energy source in front of him in horror, and said in disbelief. Eric nodded, his face very serious. Just when Eric was about to speak, the energy of energy Wang Yuan suddenly became extremely manic. Circle after circle of fluctuations constantly spread around. Everyone in the laboratory looked at the energy source nervously. Suddenly the energy of the energy source gathered to the peak, and a faint blue teleportation array slowly appeared. Not long after, a man wearing a yellow battle armor and holding a scepter appeared in everyone's eyes. Loki, the god of trickery. Because he didn't show up when Loki was messing around not long ago, so no one here knows him. Who are you? Nick Fury asked. Loki raised the scepter, then opened his arms, and slowly said to everyone. I am the god of trickery. Loki's song is here to unify Midgard. Midgard? Nick Fury said with some doubts. Oh, I almost forgot that Midgard is the so-called earth in your mouth. A wicked smile appeared on the corner of Loki's mouth, and then he said slowly and indifferently. He was not at all afraid to reveal his intentions. After all, in his eyes, he is a god. It is not a creature of the same dimension as the so-called human beings below. Unify the earth? Nick Fury snorted coldly. Hawkeye, do it. The next moment, Hawkeye quickly raised the bow and arrow in his hand, and shot towards Loki's eyebrows without any hesitation. It's too slow. With this speed, how can you kill me? Is this the only thing you people in Midgard can do? Hawkeye stretched out his hand, then directly grabbed the bow and arrow that Hawkeye shot, and taunted lightly. That's not necessarily true. Hawkeye spoke suddenly. Seeing Hawkeye's appearance, Loki screamed inwardly, it's not good. Sure enough, the next moment Loki's idea became reality. I saw the warhead split suddenly, and thick smoke came out. A huge amount of flames went straight to Loki's forehead. Even though Loki was protected by his battle armor, he was still blackened by the thick smoke. Great God, you are almost like me now. Nick Fury spoke mercilessly. It seems that your so-called gods are not very good. Damn Midgard people, how dare you mock me? Loki glared at Nick Fury, and Nick Fury glared at Loki relentlessly. The two just looked at each other. Suddenly, Lu Gigi laughed back. Thousands of years have passed. It seems that you people of Midgard have forgotten the power of our Asgard. Otherwise, how dare you mock us like this? Loki came to Nick Fury and punched Nick Fury hard in the stomach. Are you good at talking? Loki was about to use the psychic scepter to control Nick Fury. At this moment, A bow and arrow suddenly shot towards Loki's eyebrows. Director, let's go. Courage is commendable, you dare to attack me when you see my strength. Loki sneered, and then a flash appeared in front of Hawkeye. You were faithful. Loki said with a faint smile, then picked up the scepter in his hand without any hesitation, pointed the tip of the scepter at Hawkeye. The next moment, Hawkeye's black and white pupils suddenly became pitch black. Hawkeye didn't even struggle. Looking directly at Loki, he lowered his head. Owner. Loki nodded in satisfaction. Take the Tesseract, let's get out of here. Hawkeye nodded, and without any hesitation, he picked up the bow and arrow and shot an arrow at Nick Fury, who was quietly holding the Tesseract and was about to leave. Hawkeye. What are you doing? Nick Fury looked at the bow and arrow less than an inch away from him, and yelled at Hawkeye angrily. He can't hear you anymore. I've got him under control with the scepter. Loki burst out laughing. Nick Fury's face suddenly became terrified, and he quickly said, Now everyone puts my safety as the first order, resist them. Almost as soon as Nick Fury gave the order, all the agents rushed towards Loki without fear of death. Come on. Chief Protection Officer. Let the chief leave safely. But these people are some scientific research personnel, and they don't have any substantial combat effectiveness. So in a short period of time, the people here were almost killed by Loki and Hawkeye. Suddenly, Loki saw Eric among the crowd. He suddenly remembered his big brother, who was rescued by Eric when he came to Earth. So Loki came directly to Eric. He didn't kill him, but also controlled Eric with the scepter. The speed at which the two killed each other was too fast, so Nick Fury still hasn't walked out of the laboratory until now. He was kicked directly by Loki and fell to the ground. The box containing the Tesseract in his hand also fell directly. Tisk tisk tisk. I really don't know where you human beings have the courage to study the space Rubik's Cube even if you can't even step out of the Earth. Loki wanted to control Nick Fury with the scepter, but he suddenly smiled coldly. Kicked Nick Fury straight into the wall. Then Nick Fury just passed out. Drive, let's go. Loki glanced faintly at Nick Fury, who had passed out, and then Loki said to Hawkeye and Eric. Loki didn't pay attention to Nick Fury anymore. In his opinion, he was kicked by himself, and he must be close to death. So the three of them directly drove a pickup truck and walked out of the base openly. Hawkeye, who was controlled on the road, even greeted the Hill agent waiting outside. Why is Hawkeye here? Isn't he spying on the Tesseract inside? After several people walked away, Agent Hill muttered to himself strangely. Hill knows the importance of Tesseract. After all, he is a level 9 agent, and his authority in S.H.I.E.L.D. is only below that of Nick Fury. Hill only felt that something was wrong the more he thought about it, and then rushed into the base in a hurry. Sure enough, there were only corpses left in the base. Hill quickly switched to the public channel and said, Hawkeye has betrayed. Hawkeye, Dr. Eric, and an unknown man have already fled from the base in a car with the license plate number KFC. Now, the city-wide search. Receive. Almost at the same time, all the police and army in New York were mobilized. After Hill arranged the arrest order for the third person, he quickly started looking for Nick Fury in the laboratory. Fortunately, the laboratory is not big, and the clothes worn by Nick Fury are more conspicuous. Hill easily found Nick Fury, who was wearing a black coat and passed out by the wall, among the experimenters. Director, wake up. Hill spoke quickly, and then patted Nick Fury's face. But Nick Fury didn't respond at all, and Hill put his finger on Nick Fury's pulse again. Fortunately, there is still a pulse. I saw Hill took out a shot of adrenaline from the box behind him, and injected it into Nick Fury's neck without any hesitation. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the adrenaline to take effect, and Nick Fury slowly woke up. No, Hawkeye betrayed. They took the Tesseract. As soon as he woke up, Nick Fury said quickly. Hill nodded, and then said, I've sent the army and the New York Police Department to hunt them down, and I believe it won't take long for the results to come out. Nick Fury just nodded, and he smiled wryly as he looked at his collapsed sternum. Is this God? Nick Fury's eyes hardened. Loki's strength made Nick Fury feel uneasy, which further confirmed his determination to form Avengers. Hill, tell the people on the council that the Avengers program has to be activated. Nick Fury's eyes were very serious. I'm not discussing, this is informing. At this stage we don't have any way to sanction Loki, only Avengers has a glimmer of hope. Seeing Nick Fury's serious expression, Hill also knew the seriousness of this matter. Hill nodded, and then said, I see, when I return to S.H.I.E.L.D., I will discuss with the council. Where is Natasha Romanoff now? Nick Fury asked again. Hill thought for a while, and then said, now Natasha Romanoff should execute Lou Ren in a gang in New York. Tell her that now that Hawkeye has betrayed S.H.I.E.L.D., she has to return to the team as soon as possible. When he comes back, let him go directly to Carroll University to find Bruce Banner. We now need to use Banner's technology to find the location of the space gem. Hill nodded. Nick Fury pondered for a while, and then said, as for Captain America and Iron Man, let me find them. This time the crisis is enough to destroy the Earth. I believe they will not stand idly by. Having said that, Nick Fury suddenly thought of something, and shrugged his shoulders with some ease. And don't we still have Bruce and the newly timed Diana here? Although I don't know their details now, these two people must be enough for Loki to drink from a pot. Call them along by the way. It is absolutely impossible for Loki to rule the Earth by himself, so I doubt his idea is to wage war on the Earth. Maybe somewhere in the universe now, Loki's army is guarding and waiting for Loki. As long as Loki gives an order, then directly attack the Earth. Nick Fury was right. War is never a personal war, but a war between groups and groups, species and species. And if Loki wants to rule the Earth, then a large-scale war is bound to be set off to achieve his goal. In this war, the entire Earth may become Loki's battlefield. Hill left directly, and she was going to S.H.I.E.L.D. to talk to the Council. After all, this time the matter is really serious. And Nick Fury came to a somewhat small basement. Push open a secret door in the basement, and inside is a place with 1,000 square meters. The surrounding area is full of dust, and it has not been cleaned for a long time. Nick Fury ignores the environment and heads right into the middle. In the middle position, a burly and handsome middle-aged man is punching a sandbag, as if venting his inner dissatisfaction. Captain, do you still feel used to staying here during this time? Nick Fury walked over and asked. That's right. The person Nick Fury placed here was Captain America, who had just been shaved out of the thick ice of Antarctica by Iron Man. Steve turned his head, then looked at Nick Fury and nodded. Definitely used to it, although I have been sleeping for 70 years, but I feel that my mentality is as young as a young man. I feel that there is nothing in this world that can shock me anymore. Nick Fury smiled, and then said, do you want to make a bet? Captain, I'll bet $10. I bet you. Steve spoke confidently. After speaking, Steve asked, do you have any tasks for me this time? After all, he also knew that director-level figures like Nick Fury were usually very busy. If there is nothing to do, he will not come here. Nick Fury nodded. Then he took out the folder in his hand and handed it to Steve. Steve. I don't want to disturb a retiree's life if I'm not helpless. This crisis is worse than Hydra. Steve's face turned serious, too. A crisis worse than Hydra? What is that? Is the Earth destroyed? Captain America, who has a strong patriotic heart, directly opened the file Nick Fury gave him and began to read it carefully. After a long time, Steve closed his eyes tiredly. The damn Tesseract should stay in Antarctica forever. Nick Fury sighed. We didn't know that Tesseract would cause so much trouble. This time I will trouble you, Captain. Steve shook his head. I have never fought against aliens, so I can't guarantee that I will be able to solve them. And about how to find Tesseract. Before Steve finished speaking, Nick Fury quickly said, I have already found this matter, and professional people will help. Is that the Bruce Banner from Avengers you showed me earlier? Nick Fury didn't speak, but nodded silently. Also, if there is anyone in the world who understands gamma rays best, it must be Dr. Banner, who has experienced it himself. So should I go straight to the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. now? Steve spoke. Nick Fury shook his head. You pack your things first, and I'll send the helicopter to pick you up later. I still have 2 people to invite. After speaking, Nick Fury left here. Only Steve was left with a sandbag and a dazed look after he had packed his things. The top floor of the Stark building. Tony from at the moment has returned to the Stark group because of the pressure from the Wayne group. Now the Wayne group is rising at a tremendous speed. In just over a year, it has won most of the material orders from the U.S. Department of Space. Before Tony had announced the closure of the weapons manufacturing department. So now the Stark group's most profitable weapon manufacturing department is gone. If Tony doesn't want to be surpassed by Bruce, he can only find another way out. Pepper, where is the Wayne group now? Although what Tony said was a little unclear, Pepper knew what he meant. After all, Tony has been in the office all this time, thinking about how not to be surpassed by Bruce's Wayne group almost every day. Tony, according to the current data, the Wayne group has now entered the top 50 in the world, 49th to be precise. Tony took a sip of the cheeseburger, then another sip of the Americano. The sour taste brought Tony back to his senses. Tony couldn't help but give a wry smile. Bruce, Alfred, these 2 people are really terrifying opponents. They really can't relax for a moment. While the 2 were talking, Jaw Weixen suddenly said, "Sir, a black man at the front desk of the Stark building who claims to be Nick Fury is looking for you. Do you want to bring him in?" "Nick Fury? What does this guy want from me?" Tony said with some doubts. "I don't know, but from the analysis of Nick Fury's expression, it should be a very urgent matter." Pepper smiled, and then said to Tony, "The S.H.I.E.L.D. director has come to see you in person. I'm afraid this time it's not easy. You eat first, I'll bring him in." Tony nodded. In any case, S.H.I.E.L.D. was created by his father, Howard. And it is also because Nick Fury returned the inheritance to himself that he survived and created a new element. No matter from which aspect of this matter, I owe Nick Fury a favor. So Tony nodded and said, "Call him in, I'll wait for him right here." Pepper nodded and left the office. After a while, Pepper walked in leading Nick Fury. Tony frivolously took a mouthful of the explosive cheeseburger, then looked over at Nick Fury. "Boss, what happened again? I'm busy playing against Bruce right now. If it's not too important, I'm not interested." Nick Fury's face was serious, and he directly passed the information in his hand to Tony. "I'm afraid this time the matter is much more serious than you imagined. Sorry, I'm not used to being handed things to me, you'd better just put them on the table." Nick Fury didn't object either, and put it directly on the table. Tony couldn't help but put down the hamburger in his hand, then picked up the information that Nick Fury put on the table, and began to look carefully. "Everything on Jiwei's file has been sorted out," Tony suddenly said with a serious face. "Yes, sir." The Jarvis mechanical voice sounded. A laser scanned the document, and the next moment, all the content in the document appeared in the eyes of the three in a three-dimensional 3D form. "To be honest, I really think your brains have been eaten by pigs." Looking at the content above, Tony scolded Nick Fury. "The Tesseract thing has already created 2 monsters. This kind of thing can just let him sink in the Antarctic. Why bring him back?" Nick Fury smiled awkwardly. "That's an unlimited resource, I don't think anyone will be tempted." Tony snorted disdainfully. "If you want to get anything, you must have the status you deserve. Humans don't even have the power to fight in the interstellar space. Why do you think we should be able to get unlimited resources? This kind of thing should be one of the few existences in the entire universe, not to mention the Earth. Are you happy to provoke such an existence now?" Tony looked at the next item. "Natasha Romanoff, Linton Barton, Bruce Banner, and Steve Rogers and me? You want the 5 of us to form an Avenger boy?" Tony couldn't help but sneer. "Are you trying to let me debut?" Nick Fury shook his head. "You are just the prototype of Avengers, and the reason I created it is to make this team able to deal with any crisis that arises in the world." Tony Pist let out a laugh. S.H.I.E.L.D. is obviously the largest violent law enforcement agency in the world. You have the most advanced equipment and weapons in the world. Nuclear weapons can even strike anywhere in the world through satellites. Without this kind of power, instead of wanting to create an Avengers, Nick Fury, what do you mean?" Tony was a man cursed with knowledge, so he thought further than anyone else. Nick Fury sighed. "This world is not as simple as you think, Tony. There are many things that you can't discover, and they are hidden in the dark places of the Earth. Those guys are not just existences that can be eliminated by nuclear strikes. We must have the same matching single body strength." "Okay, I agree with this plan, I will join you, but what about Bruce?" Tony's eyes were fixed on Nick Fury. Nick Fury shook his head. "They are different from us, they are not from this world. I am afraid that one day they may betray us. If one day I can understand how they crossed over, then I may accept them, but definitely not now." When Nick Fury talked about this, his face was very serious. What's more, now Bruce is secretly creating an alliance corresponding to Avengers. Listening to Nick Fury's words, Tony raised his head and thought for a while. "You're supposed to be talking about the Justice League, right? But hasn't Congress already rejected his proposal?" "It's true that Congress rejected it, but do you think Bruce will be obedient?" Tony shook his head. Bruce is the same kind of person as himself. What's more, Bruce told him about the purpose of the Justice League's creation. "So what about this time? Are you looking for Bruce?" Tony's eyes were fixed on Nick Fury. Nick Fury nodded. "This time the matter is too serious, I can't be careless. And Diana next to Bruce is also very powerful. Through data comparison and analysis, S.H.I.E.L.D. found that it can even fight Hulk without falling into a disadvantage." Tony didn't speak, but lowered his head and pondered, not knowing what he was thinking. Nick Fury was not in a hurry, and sat on the sofa beside him. After a long time, Tony suddenly raised his head. "The Avengers don't have a source of funding right now. Congress isn't going to fund an organization like that." Nick Fury sighed and nodded, but he didn't know what the point of Tony asking about it now was. Tony continued to speak. "In the name of the Stark Group, I can provide all the funds the Avengers need throughout the process, but I only have one request, and I want to be the captain. When talking about the previous few sentences, Nick Fury was still very happy. But at the last sentence of, Nick Fury suddenly calmed down. Let's talk about this matter later, and solve the immediate problem first. Obviously, in Nick Fury's view, the current Tony can't hold up the big banner of Avengers at all. So even if Tony provides the funds for the whole process, Nick Fury does not want to hand over this responsibility to the room sharing. Why? Tony asked, a little puzzled. I admit that I used to be a little playful, but now I have my heart for little Pepper. I am even ready to let her quit her job as a secretary, and I can't help but marry her. No. On this matter, Nick Fury was firm. All right. Tony shrugged. Leave me alone for financial issues, you can solve them yourself. Nick Fury nodded. These years he has also embezzled a lot of money in S.H.I.E.L.D., and he can last for a while. And as long as this war is over, the Congress and the Council will definitely see their value, and all the series of problems will be solved by then. Tony stood up, and then said, it just so happens that I haven't seen Bruce for a long time, so I'll go with you. After this time is over, I'm going to call all covers of New York Magazine last year have a good party. After speaking, Tony looked at Nick Fury. Director Nick Fury, are you coming with me? Nick Fury was about to speak when Tony shook his head. Oh, I almost forgot, you can't fly. You don't want to drive there, do you? Tony sneered at Nick Fury, then went straight to a machine. See you at the Wayne Group. After finishing speaking, the battle armor automatically passed through the machine and all of it was worn on Tony's body, and then Tony flew directly in the direction of Wayne Group. Nick Fury smiled disdainfully. He took out his mobile phone, clicked on the software, and clicked it casually. The Chevrolet in the underground parking lot flew out in an instant. It really flew out, because there are 4 target energy arc reactors installed under the Chevrolet. Not long after, the Chevrolet stopped straight above the Stark building. Nick Fury opened the car door, got in, and drove off in the direction of Wayne's Group. Tony also saw the scene behind him. He couldn't help but flew to Nick Fury. I didn't expect that the guy from Vanki would really pull out these technologies from you, S.H.I.E.L.D. Definitely, S.H.I.E.L.D. has gathered the top scientists in the world. Tony looked at Nick Fury's somewhat proud face and suddenly laughed. Maybe, but alas, what's outdated is always outdated. After finishing speaking, Tony didn't wait for Nick Fury to open his mouth, and directly increased his horsepower, throwing Nick Fury several hundred meters away. Nick Fury's face darkened. By the time Nick Fury's car arrived at the Wayne Group, Tony had already parked at the gate waiting for him. Sure enough, backward technology will always be backward. Seeing Nick Fury coming, Tony laughed mercilessly. If it is true that all the top scientists in the world are in Shandongju, why did the space carrier need me some time ago? Tony yelled at Nick Fury. Nick Fury didn't speak either, because Tony was telling the truth. Not long ago, Nick Fury had a whim. He wanted to build S.H.I.E.L.D. directly on the aircraft carrier, and then let the aircraft carrier rise in the air to monitor the world 24 hours a day. But there are a few hiccups with the project that S.H.I.E.L.D. scientists haven't been able to resolve. In the end, there was no other way, and Nick Fury also found Tony. Tony casually reminded those so-called top scientists, and then the problem was solved. So Nick Fury could only touch his nose in embarrassment. Then he said, Bruce's butler is here, let's go. Mr. Stark, Mr. Fury, what are you doing here today? An old man driving a 3-wheeled scooter slowly drove towards the direction of the two of them. When he got in front of the two of them, Alfred asked with some doubts. Tony spoke first. Alfred, we have something very important to discuss with Bruce. Is he here now? Alfred nodded. Master is currently training in the basement, and he has to train for at least 3 hours every day. Take us there. Nick Fury also opened the mouth. Alfred frowned, looking at Nick Fury who was speaking. He didn't forget that the last time this black man met the old man was not friendly. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the headset. Alfred, bring them in, and bring them directly to the underground base to find me. Bruce gasped and spoke. Yes, Tool. You two get in the car. Alfred patted his tricycle, then smiled and said to the two. Since Bruce doesn't mind what happened last time, then Alfred, as Bruce's butler, naturally doesn't mind either. Tony and Nick Fury looked at each other, then sat on the back seat of the tricycle. With the sound of a motor starting, the tricycle immediately headed towards the underground base. The Wayne Group is much bigger than when Nick Fury was last here. After walking for about 20 minutes, they stopped in front of a relatively hidden small building. As Alfred pressed a switch, the small building actually split from the middle. Go in. This is the Master's training room. Tony and Nick Fury nodded, then jumped off the tricycle and walked straight in between the two buildings. When they reached a distance of about 50 meters between the two floors, a small well that was not deep appeared in front of them. It should be here, let's go down. Nick Fury looked at the well opening in front of him and said. You go down first. Tony said without any hesitation. Nick Fury gave Tony a supercilious look, and went straight down the ladder in the well. Tony shrugged, and followed Nick Fury down. Damn, this guy is too extravagant. Even Tony, in the process of climbing down, couldn't help but secretly scolded Bruce for being a rich man. Tony and Nick Fury secretly calculated. Their depth here is at least 70 meters from the ground. If you want to build a base in such a deep place, you need to spend at least $3 billion upwards. The two finally came under the base. In front of them, a huge amount of black appeared in front of the two from Black's door. In the middle of the door is a bat icon with huge amounts of it. Just as Tony was about to knock on the door, there was a sudden knock on the door. Identity confirmation. Tony Stark, Nick Fury. The two of you have been granted permission to enter the base. May I ask you to enter? Enter. Tony spoke up. The two doors opened towards the outside, and a gym with huge amounts of money appeared in front of the two of them. There are all the facilities here. But the most shocking thing is that Bruce at the moment is doing pull-ups with a 150-kilogram iron plate hanging on his body. F*K, are you still human? Watching this scene, Tony couldn't help but lose his voice. Bruce didn't speak, but continued to do his own thing. After doing more than a dozen pull-ups with a weight of 150 kilograms, Bruce jumped off the horizontal bar, and then massaged his sore shoulders. Sorry, you two came here in such a big way, what's the matter? Bruce took a towel casually, wiped his sweat, looked at the two and asked. Tony turned to look at Nick Fury, gesturing for him to speak. Nick Fury didn't show any hesitation, and stood up directly. Then he took out another document from the document bag and handed it to Bruce. What happened here is the reason why we are here today. You can talk after reading it. Bruce glanced up at Nick Fury. Although the two had only met each other a few days ago, Bruce still didn't have any good feelings for Nick Fury. Bruce didn't speak, took the document from Nick Fury's hand, and looked at it carefully. Tesseract. Midgard. Loki. Bruce constantly memorized every node, put down the file and closed his eyes to think. After a long time, Bruce opened his eyes. Have you S.H.I.E.L.D. found out who this Loki is? Bruce suddenly turned his head to Nick Fury and asked. Nick Fury shook his head. Currently S.H.I.E.L.D. can only confirm one thing. Loki does not belong to the Earth, but also wants to invade the Earth, in an attempt to start a war. I do have a possibility here. Bruce stomped, and then looked at the two of them and said. What could be? Nick Fury stood up excitedly, keeping one eye on Bruce. Bruce didn't speak, but stood up. He came to a bookshelf, and took out one of the few books on it, and put it on the table. I saw 4 large characters written on the book, Norse mythology. Nick Fury has definitely seen Norse mythology. After reading this book, Nick Fury's mind turned quickly. Suddenly, his eyes widened. He looked at Bruce in surprise. You mean, this Loki is Thor's uncle who came to Earth not so long ago? Bruce shook his head. Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. But what Bruce said immediately made Nick Fury's heart rise directly. There's always something wrong with myths. Thor is Loki's big brother, if that Loki you're talking about is really from Asgard. This time, Nick Fury's brows were furrowed. You mean Asgard wants to make war on us? Bruce shook his head. I guess this matter should be Loki's own idea. When I met Odin, I was in New Mexico, but he didn't bring Loki by his side, and his expression was a little gloomy. I wondered what happened to Odin, and he was expelled from Asgard. So this matter should have nothing to do with God's domain. But what exactly happened? I still need to see more information. Nick Fury nodded. The helicopter's out there. We're ready to go. Just now and again. New York. 3 curved wings. This was originally a common commercial area, but I don't know when. All the vendors have moved out of here one after another. The original skyscrapers were all flattened. Instead, there are 2 identical artificial lakes. Each artificial lake is several kilometers long, which makes people wonder what it is for. And behind the 2 artificial lakes, a skyscraper with a height of more than 50 floors was built there. Every security guard here is holding a special advanced weapon from the research room, and is wearing a black suit, with S.H.I.E.L.D. written on the uniform on the chest. This is a branch base of S.H.I.E.L.D., on the plane. Nick Fury smiled and looked down at the base. Then he said to the two of them, what do you think about this place? That's it. Neither Bruce nor Tony was interested. Just a small base. Hearing what the two said, Nick Fury was obviously a little dissatisfied. But soon he was laughing. Just wait, something more shocking will happen later. The plane made a full circle around the base, then slowly stopped and landed at the airport. When the 3 people got off the plane, the other 2 planes had just arrived. I saw Black Widow and Bruce Banner stepping off one plane, while the other one was Captain America Steve Rogers, who had been sleeping for 70 years. Captain, I've heard about you since I was a child. I heard that you were dug out from Antarctica some time ago. I still don't believe it. Banner stepped down, then smiled and held out his hand to Steve. Steve reached out and shook Banner's hand too. Dr. Banner, I have read your profile. You have obtained 8 doctorates from Oxford University, which is really impressive. Banner smiled honestly. I didn't want to come, after all, I feel that this kind of thing should not be my turn. But because I want to find the Gamma Ray City, I guess I am the only person in the world who understands Gamma Ray best. While the 2 were talking, Nick Fury walked over with Bruce and Tony. This is Tony Stark, the Iron Man you often see on TV. Nick Fury pointed to Tony and introduced to Steve. Steve nodded. I definitely know. There was a trace of nostalgia in Steve's eyes, and he stretched out his hand towards Tony. I'm Steve Rogers. Tony smiled and shook hands with Steve. For some reason, Tony always felt that there was an inexplicable aura about this man. My name is Tony Stark, and this one? Steve turned his attention to Bruce, who was wearing a pure black bat battlesuit. On the way before, Bruce had already put on the bat battlesuit. So far, he doesn't want to expose his Batman identity to the public's attention. He's Nick Fury was dumb, and just as he was trying to justify introducing Bruce to Steve, Bruce spoke up himself. I've seen your profile, Captain America. Bruce held out his hand directly. There are things about your character that even I admire. Just call me Batman. Steve nodded, and shook Bruce's hand. Okay, now that you all know each other, let's go in directly. Nick Fury spoke at this moment. Everyone nodded and walked in together. They took an elevator directly to the highest floor. This is the Combat Command Center of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Hill and Sitwell are constantly directing them. Seeing Nick Fury come in, Hill said hello, and after a few words with Sitwell, he came to Chuck Fury. What is Hill's current situation? Nick Fury asked seriously. Tesseract stolen. This is no small matter. The Council and the people above have been alarmed. Hill shook his head. We have now monitored all the networks in the country. As long as there is a signal, they are our helpers. But now they seem to have disappeared out of thin air. Nick Fury sighed. Then he looked at Banner, Bruce and Tony. Is there anything you can do? Banner took a step forward at this time, came to Hill's side, and asked, Are you monitoring gamma ray energy now? Hill nodded. We have used all the equipment that can be used. Banner sat directly on the main console, and then began to constantly type with the keyboard. Your method is a bit old, and the search area is too wide, it is basically impossible to be located. I will try to see if I can change the search method and try to control the search area within 1/4 of the area. Everyone watched Banner write a line of code without saying a word. After about 10 minutes, Banner stood up. Now you guys restart the device. All eyes were on Hill and Nick Fury. Nick Fury nodded, and then said loudly, Now the people in charge of the gamma rays restart the equipment. After the voice fell, all the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. shut down the machine vigorously. Then everything is logged in, but the computer restarts. About 10 seconds later, the computers all lit up one by one. The code written by Banner also worked. I saw the numbers on the large screen beating constantly, and finally gathered in Manhattan, New York. There is a very weak gamma radiation in a place here, and the radiation time has not exceeded 2 days not long ago. The place they explored was a hotel. S.H.I.E.L.D. was very fast, and immediately found out that this hotel will have a charity party tonight. Nick Fury narrowed his eyes and thought carefully. Natasha Romanoff was distraught. She hurriedly said, Should I inform the agents under my command to let them stay in the crowd, and take down Loki directly when he appears at night? Now Natasha Romanoff is still not sure whether Hawkeye is dead or not, so she can only suggest to Nick Fury anxiously. No. Just then, Tony spoke up. Hearing what Tony said, Natasha Romanoff instinctively froze for a moment. Then he turned to Tony angrily and said, Why do you say that? I know you're in a hurry, but don't be in a hurry. Tony laughed dryly, then quickly opened his mouth to explain. Isn't there a charity party here tonight? We might as well wait for that time to do it. And I have the impression of this charity party. I seem to have seen this name in the email a few days ago. Their boss should have an invitation. I was right, but I just let the little pepper be thrown into the garbage dump. Really? Can I go with you? Natasha Romanoff asked impatiently. No. Before Tony could speak, Nick Fury spoke first. Why? Agent Natasha Romanoff, the current situation is very complicated. I know you are worried about why Agent Barton betrayed, But as an agent, the most basic essential is to stay calm. Your current mood swings are completely incompetent for this task. Hearing Nick Fury say this, Natasha Romanoff's face was cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, Natasha Romanoff sighed leisurely. I see, Director Nick Fury. After speaking, Natasha Romanoff randomly found a seat and sat down. She had a bad life in the first place, and the reason why she is still alive is to atone for her sins, and she doesn't deserve the sympathy of others. But not Barton. He originally wanted to say something to Nick Fury, but seeing Nick Fury's dark face, he couldn't help but give up on this matter. At this time Tony said, prepare us an empty room, we need to discuss the plan for the evening. Nick Fury took a bunch of keys and handed them to Tony. Guys, let's go. Banner, you come too. Banner nodded. Now that the program is stable, they have found the information they were looking for. So Bruce can't play a big role here, it's better to leave with Tony and the others. Because Nick Fury didn't let Natasha Romanoff take part in this action, he didn't go there. A group of 4 people left the command room directly. Hitwell looked up at the 5 people who had left with a gloomy expression, then continued to work with his head down. Tony took the key and opened a door casually, and then everyone walked in. After walking in, everyone sat at a round table. Why don't you speak? Tony laughed teasingly. Steve couldn't help asking. The person we're going to face tonight is an alien, aren't you worried at all? He really couldn't figure it out. That's an alien. Are these people here really not worried about failure at all? Banner shrugged his shoulders, then spread his hands, and said helplessly, Captain, you must have read my profile. At most, I can provide you with some back-end assistance. If it wasn't for the situation beyond his control, that guy Fury would definitely won't let me go to the front. After all, I have an untamable monster inside me. Speaking of which, Banner sighed. Steve was silent for a moment, reassuring Banner, and then glanced constantly into Tony's and Bruce's eyes again. Steve. Those guys are just aliens. Seeing Steve's worried look, Wong couldn't help but speak. Now is not 70 years ago. We have the ability to destroy a city in a few minutes. The 3 people present besides you have the ability to make this weapon. Bruce also said. The weapon Tony said is not suitable for use in this kind of battlefield. But there's really nothing to worry about. Bruce shook his head too. It's just a Loki at best, don't worry, if it doesn't work out, I'll call Diana. Diana? Steve asked with some doubts. Bruce thought for a while. Maybe you can call him Wonder Woman, don't worry, she's no weaker than Loki. Hearing this, Steve finally breathed a sigh of relief. What should we do with the plan for the night? Do you have any ideas? Maybe we can talk about it. Bruce shook his head. Tony also suddenly sneered. Steve. I said you were Captain America anyway. Why are you always worrying about this and that? It's just an alien, how could it scare you like this? Hearing Tony's words, Steve slammed the table and stood up. I just don't want to increase casualties for no reason. Is there anything wrong with that? Tony curled his lips. Don't get excited, man. I just feel that you are a little too fussy. Why? Steve snorted coldly. Then he opened his mouth and said, I have read your profile, Tony Stark. You are an extremely selfish person who only thinks of yourself. People like you are not worthy of being a hero at all. I think that if one day, the Earth has suffered, you will definitely turn away without hesitation. Tony also stood up not to be outdone. I prefer that under my leadership, the Earth will never suffer. Tony was about half a head lower than Steve, but his imposing manner was not weaker than Steve's at all. There was a look of interest in the eyes of the needlepoint towards Mimong Bruce. Steve asked coldly. You can only rely on your steel battlesuit. If you take it off, what else are you worth? Tony said without any hesitation. The world's richest man, playboy, scientist, philanthropist. I have so many titles that I can't even count them in my life. Hearing Tony say this, Steve became more and more angry. He clenched his fists tightly and grabbed Tony's collar. Story Stark. Put on your battlesuit and let's fight, put it on. But Tony was unmoved. Okay, stop messing around. Tonight Tony enters the venue for the charity gala. Remember to put on your battle armor. Steve and I will wait outside, and when we receive your signal, we will go in. Dr. Banner, your words provide us with remote assistance at the SHIELD headquarters. If the Tesseract starts to move, we need to know where he is first. Banner nodded. Leave it to me. Steve nodded too. Tony naturally had no objections. So the plan was settled like this.